Om Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahi Tejasvinavaditam Mastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May He nourish us both, teacher and student. May He give us strength and vigor in our studies. May He enlighten our minds. May we not cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Swami, could I ask a question about the causes of karma, which are referred to in 1814?
Why are we jumping so far ahead?
I was looking up something on a theme, and then I just didn't really. It never struck me before. It in this translation it says the seat of action and likewise the agent, the various senses, and the different and manifold efforts, the presiding divinity being the fifth of these. These are the causes of karma, which I take it these are the individual human being. You know, they're causes in respect of an individual human actor or agent. But I did look up a little bit on it, and it sort of said, but haven't got an integrated understanding of it. But it said the seat of action is sort of like the body, or it's the Dharma Kestra, that's how you pronounce it. The field, the Dharma field that a human body is, and then likewise the agent. The agent, I don't know, I can't remember what that was. The senses are like the external senses and the senses of action, I think. There's 5 of each, so there's 10 of those senses. I think I saw those as like how the outer world is getting filtered into you before you act or whatever, you know, like, but stuff comes in through your 5 senses. And then the action is we
have another chair. Yeah, we have a chair.
The inner ones of action is another thing. And then the different and manifold efforts. I don't know whether that's something to do with energy, with
just receive that might be a visitor.
And the presiding divinity being the 5th. The presiding divinity, I wasn't complete.
Oh yes, come. Good.
So, but what?
Yeah, right. Good. Have a seat. No, not that one. Yeah.
So.
Okay. So we're going all over the place. So let's try and focus in a little bit. There you are.
I thought I got
It's God calling.
Yeah, with the answer.
It's my brother.
He's got the answer.
I'll have to give you.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about
Right. Somehow we've deviated from our systematic study of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We are, in fact, actually on the 4th chapter. However, a question has arisen, and it is in the context of the 18th chapter. We can study the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in many different ways, but there's a way in which it is set out, which is relevant to any kind of scholarly presentation today for ease of understanding. Even in public speaking, it's there that you tell the group what you're about to say, then you say what you will say, and then afterwards what you have said. And that's the system. So the Srimad Bhagavad Gita is no different. Firstly, a few things about scripture itself. And I'm going to here quote Sri Ramakrishna, the 19th century mystic. Scripture is like a mixture of sand and sugar. And it's our difficult job to extract the sweetness, the sugar, and leave off the sand. If you chew the sand, you'll break your teeth. It's okay for the dentist, but not so good for you. So how to sort all this out? We require teachers. Now we're coming to a period of time, I think it's the 26th Guru Purnima is?
I don't remember, 25th or 26th?
26th, I think it is. Anyhow. So the Guru Purnima honors all teachers, competent teachers. What makes a teacher competent? What makes a teacher competent is the fact that they are full of what the Gita has described as steady wisdom, sthita prajna. That is, there is no individual egoistic motive for what they're doing. They simply become an open channel for God's grace and spread that everywhere for the welfare of the totality. So when that happens, a person becomes something like a world mover, somebody who is dedicated. Sister Nivedita, Margaret Elizabeth Noble, was called Nivedita, the dedicated one, because she took all her energies and directed them for one single purpose. And the purpose has many subdivisions and layers. But we can say that the main purpose really was to disseminate the philosophy of Vedanta. What's so special about Vedanta? Why shouldn't we do anything else? It's because Vedanta is like the underlying current for every single religious expression. If there's truth, it must be one unchanging truth. You cannot have a Muslim truth. You cannot have a Christian truth. You cannot have a Buddhist truth or a scientific humanist truth separate. Truth is truth. And so what happens when you drink in truth, enact truth, when truth becomes your whole expression and life, then satyameva jayate, truth alone triumphs then, it's triumphal. And that's the story in every single religious experience, that ultimately the truth or goodness, all the noble values will ultimately triumph. Not necessarily immediately, but ultimately it will do it. Why should that be? Because underneath it is truth. And so that truth is called Vedanta. From vid to know to see, anta, the essence of the end of it. And that is the truth regardless of how you express it. Whether you are part of a religion, whether you're not part of a religion, it makes no difference. We all fundamentally have the same problems and issues. So the fact of the matter is that there is some kind of purpose. If you talk of evolution and evolutionary change, even biological evolution, there's no reason to suspect that the whole process is purposeless, has no purpose. In fact, if you take the fossil record, you'll see step 1, step 2, step 3, all going in a scale, looking like a linear scale to give us some kind of goal direction. And we know that self-directed organisms will have a direction. Even if you block something, its development will find a different way. We know that in plants even. So there's some kind of inner urge toward a goal. But what is that goal? The goal itself is a truth. But is this not true here? Isn't it true that this is a table? Isn't it true that we have a chair here? Isn't it true something printed out? I hope so. No, nothing. Okay. It's not true. So these are true, but they have to be true in relation to something. What is that? This table has to be true in relation to my eyes, your eyes, in relation to the photons that come and hit there and hit the retina, And then some kind of recognition in the brain takes place to say, from experience, yes, we recognize this from our experience. We learned that this was a table. We learned that this was hard because same thing is here. When my skin engages here, then the contrast between this table and my skin says, my skin is softer than this table is hard. But it's relatively so. To an elephant, it's very soft. So this is all a relative reality. We have all these relative truths going on, and there's that variety of truth. But there's a solid variety of truth which doesn't change. How do we know that? Because to register something that changes, something unchanging must be there in contrast to it. If a river flows, there must be a solid bank. If a river flows, there must be somebody or something that observes it. Some river is flowing. And so we understand just from empirical experience that when we see some object in the world, then there must be a subject that observes it, that sees it, that knows it. And the object is known. The subject is a knower. We picked up. I don't know how you jump from 13 to 18, but don't gallop through the Bhagavad Gita like that in a week. It's not designed for doing that. So you jump from 13 to 18. I don't know if you skip the rest. So the Bhagavad Gita is designed so that all the contents are contained in chapter 2 and again repeated in chapter 18. And that's the significance of 18. Now you can study this in that way to say, let me study chapter 2. Some people may study it like this and get the gist, the essence of what is there. And then on the other side, let me study chapter 18 and get the gist and essence. Even if you do that, you have to take all the commentaries in mind. And there's a living commentary called a teacher. And that's the significance of a competent teacher. Competent teacher that is able to willingly share with you some direct experience. Somebody probably who has gone through all the vicissitudes, all the ups and downs. And somebody who has no personal motive, no egoistic agenda. And somebody who, somebody like that. Somebody who knows the purport of the scripture and somebody who has enough purity of mind to convey it in a truthful way with a sense of love for humanity to do that. So Vyasa, we honor Vyasa because Vyasa is the embodiment of all such teachers. It was Vyasa, really, to manage to systematically put into some kind of order the Upanishads. The Upanishads, the primary scripture, the Vedanta. Then he managed to compile the whole of the Mahabharata, and the Bhagavad Gita is just a section of it, small section of as an extract, a compilation of the flowers, the bouquet of flowers that come from the Mahabharata. We don't say even that, we say a bouquet of flowers from the Upanishads, and after each chapter, we see that there's Yoga Shastri, this is Upanishad. It's another Upanishad. Nevertheless, most scriptures are smrti. That means a thing that is remembered. And you know how unreliable that is. John tells somebody, you see, I got a greyhound. Then the next person says, oh, I heard John's dog is nearly black. And then the next person says, oh, John's dog is dirty. And then it comes back to John. John, they say you're a dirty dog. So this is how the Chinese whispers go. And this is why human memory is so unreliable and poor. So we call it smarta. Most of the scriptures that we have today fall into this classification. It's not that they're not true, but there is sand and sugar. And how do we sort out the sugar and do away with the sand? So we have to have some basis for it. Firstly, we have to have a scripture which is as simple and reliable as possible, that doesn't have the complications of theology, dogma, doctrine, personalities, and so on. Secondly, we have to have somebody who's equipped to make a commentary on it with a certain perspective of wisdom and freedom, so that you can make your own choices also. It's important that you determine what is the truth, not that I determine the truth for you or anybody else. So enough suggestions are there to say, this looks like the truth. And therefore it has to be backed up with a certain element of philosophical points of view. Certain reasoning has to be there. And a ring of truth will be there with you. Yes, that makes sense. That seems to be true. So now the 18th chapter is like that. But in order to study it, you have to see that the 18th chapter and all the other chapters are divided into themes. And so that particular stanza that you quoted, you really have to go back to where is the theme, which starts off from the 9th stanza. The 9th stanza to the 12th. And you're asking for number?
14.
14. So 9th to the 12th.
I did read the other one.
Then from the 12th onwards. Okay. So you go step back a little bit and see what does that look like. Now, even if you take that into account and step back, you go to the 12th, you'll find another theme arising. So from the 13th to the 16th. So what is the theme that goes from the 9th stanza to the 12th? It's Tyaga of Sattvika nature is indispensable. An element of discipline, an element of detachment. Attachment to the fruit is the opposite of Tyaga. Tyaga is abandoning the fruit. That is, you do something without any thought of what the consequence might be. That's the prerequisite to anything like that. So that particular stanza goes like this: Karyam ityeva yat karma niyatam kriyate archana sangam tatka palam chaiva satyaga sattika mataha. Whatever obligatory work is done, that is, you have no escape from it. Eating is an obligatory work. If you like, sleeping is obligatory work. And if you want a career, then study is an obligatory work. Making ends meet somehow would be an obligatory work for some. The inpatient in the hospital has no intention to be there permanently. Neither does he want to be treated all his life. Still, he willingly undergoes treatment with an attitude of detachment. And so, merely because it ought to be done, abandoning attachment and also the fruit, that abandonment is deemed to be sattvika. Sattvika means pure. Pure means this. We take the moral content away from it. Pure means you have no complication in the mind. There's no disturbing wave in the mind for you. It's all to do with joy and calmness and peace and all those kinds of qualities. We only get into trouble when we insert a profit-actor complex. I do this in order for it to benefit me, and I'm the one who's doing it. We have to get away from that idea. And so then, the relinquisher imbued with this sattva and a steady understanding with his doubts dispelled. This is not an immediate process. How long will it take for you to dispel your doubts? A long time. We have doubts about everything. Hates not any disagreeable work, and nor is attached to an agreeable one. You do this, okay. You do that, okay. See what happens in the office? You like to do the work that you like to do, and the boring stuff you leave to last. It's a bit like two strategies are available. This is what we call my brother syndrome. And this is associated with what some can consider to be, I have to be careful because people's tastes change. Some people consider to be the spawn of Satan called Brussels sprouts. And then other people consider to be absolutely delightful thing to eat. Now, when I was small, I didn't particularly like them, nor did my brother. My strategy was to leave them right to the end and hope they weren't there, but they were. My brother's strategy was different. It was to eat them all up, grimace, make a face, almost, keeping every effort to keep it down, and then enjoy the rest. Maybe his strategy was better, I don't know, you see. So all these things we divide into Brussels sprouts work and non-Brussels sprouts work. And it's the things which we like, we do first. The things we don't like, we may procrastinate on them. We have a strategy about it anyway. Or we may do it the other way around, get all of that out of the way. But what's the key to efficiency? Key to efficiency is to take all work as a worship. To be mindful. See, mindfulness is now the buzzword. to be mindful of every activity. An example of mindfulness. Even walking is a kind of work, isn't it? We don't call it working, we call it walking. There's just a slight difference in terms. But we have to walk. We don't think about it. It's an autonomous action. We just walk. The legs go. We don't even think about it. Where did this skill come from? At some point in time, we had to think about it. Maybe when we were 1 year of age, maybe 2 years of age. Normally not more than that. So first of all, there's a crawling thing. That doesn't happen all of a sudden. The baby has to learn to strengthen its back and roll over and do the cobra posture, Bhujangasana, and strengthen the spine. Then they realize, oh, I see, one knee can come forward. That puts me half a knee forward. Then I put the other one. That puts me a full body forward. I see. And to do that, an alternate arm has to go. Now I'm off. And it's wonderful because curiosity now is much, curiosity was always there. But now I'm mobile. I can investigate everything, including the glass vase. Everything is at my disposal. And so despite warnings, I still go because I'm in exploration mode. Then I realize I can catch a table. When I catch a table, I realize, oh, I see. I have enough muscular power to haul me up. Sometimes I'll fall, but sometimes something, and then I can be steady. Very good. Wouldn't it be nice to go from this table to that table? And a few steps, half running, half walking, with delight sounds maybe, that of the joy and freedom of doing it, and it happens. See? So jumping in one jump doesn't happen. And all of this is conditioning. Ultimately, walking, we don't even think about it. Driving, we don't even think about it. All of these things we don't think about. Why? Because we made it our behavior. We rehearsed it. We repeated it. We learned the technique of doing it. We repeated it sufficiently. It's now in an automatic mode, autonomic mode. How to make the mind like that? How to make sure that the mind is never really disturbed and that every action that we do is done with a sense of equanimity. To put all our attention or all our concentration to that unit activity, and then to add some delight to it, to say, let me do it for the real entity that's doing it for me. So now we'll have to come back to the 4th chapter really to explain it. And that's why maybe it's not such a good to jump around. So he hates no disagreeable work, nor is attached to agreeable work. In fact, for that person, there's no agreeable, no disagreeable. It is indeed impossible for an embodied being to renounce action entirely. We say, I learned something today. What is that? I learned I am the Atman. I am the Lord of the universe. I am that single entity, unchanging entity, infinite, invisible. Water cannot wet me, fire cannot burn me, all of these things. And so I need not do anything. Now this is a counter-argument because in non-dualism there's always that objection. If everything is one without a second, then why should we do anything? What's the reason for doing any action? See, that argument. The reason is you're saying it in an abstract theoretical way. You don't know it. Because as soon as somebody gives you a biting word, you bite back. You see, you have this feeling of embodiment. I am this body. I am this psychophysical complex. Another way of saying it is, I am the car that runs. Now a car has many parts. So now we can jump ahead a little bit and we go to this 14. What is this car comprised of? A list of things are there. And prior to that, we have this statement, Panchayatani Mahabhago Karanani Nibodhame Samkye Kritante Proktani Siddhaya Sarva Karmanam or Karmanam. Learn from me these 5 factors to the accomplishment of all your actions. All your actions involve these 5 things, as taught in the Sankhya, which is the end of action. Sankhya refers to that philosophy in Vedanta of Kapila. 6 philosophies are there. Kapila is this one, and it's an atheistic philosophy, no God in it. So, all these points apply to what we call this combination of body, mind, and the source of it. Atman, we call it Jivatman, is to learn his lessons from Prakriti, and Prakriti can be seen to have this fivefold nature. What is that? It says, Adhishtanam tata karta karanam cha pratagvidam vividascha prataksheksta devam chaiva tra panchamam. The body, the agent, the various senses, agent means driver, the various senses, the different functions of various sorts, and the presiding deity, also the fifth. This comprises these fivefold necessary things to act. So we can draw a parallel here with a car and say, what are the components of a car? Firstly, there has to be a driver. Secondly, a car with parts. This body has so many parts. If you take it at the cellular level, some 60, 70 trillion parts are there. Then these parts will have various functions, arms, legs, and so on, but intrinsically it doesn't affect what I intrinsically call me. Supposing at the age of 5, I lose a limb, my arm, say. And then you question a person, did that affect you? Did somehow this thing that you called you, did it change you in some way? Or you just lost a part? Now it's easy to lose parts, particularly if you try and assemble anything from IKEA. There will always be parts left over, and you never know. It's one of the mysteries. It's called the IKEA mystery. And you never know where the parts are, and there are various bolts and things and nuts left over. And you just tuck them away and pretend they never came with the package. And things seem to work already, except as time goes on, the slight creak on the one side, you realize, that's where that bolt should have been. See? The secret about anything that is assembled from parts is it's always not for the good of itself, it's the good of another independent entity. The car being made of parts is for the good of the agent that drives it. And anything that is assembled from parts will disassemble just as easily. You can take a car apart, or you can replace a part. This body itself is made from so many parts. That is why we know it is not intrinsically I. But the mystery is, how is it that we feel embodied? How is it that we think we are I, is the great mystery. And it takes a lifetime, maybe more, to work out, to live your life in a detached way, as if you were driving a car. And that's why a slight change, a slight rephrasing, a slight redefinition and reevaluation of things necessary. Instead of saying my body, why don't we say the earth car or God's earth car, whatever way you like to describe it. Instead of saying the mind, why don't we say the Lord's sitting room, something like that. Whichever way you like to shift it, it's necessary to revalue everything. When we value everything and register it in the proper way, then our outlook changes and our inward behavior changes and our inward response changes. So all of these, what we call life, are all assembled from a number of different parts. And the overall function is to receive and react. And the reception and reaction always happens on the skin. No matter whether it's a plant, no matter whether it's an animal, or even a human. How so in a plant? You see, you can get a reaction from a plant, in some cases by poking it a little bit, it might close up. Or when the sun's rays are felt, the photosynthesis effect kicks in and the plant turns its head toward the sun. How does it know it? So there's a reactivity there. It's not that the environment drives the reaction. Something inside internally reacts to the environment. And so there's an input and a series of changes, some of them chemical, some of them enzymic, and ultimately going to what we call the epigenetic level, a switch on, switch off of the nucleus of the cell. And for that reason, a response occurs. Do this. And it all works perfectly well. Now you may say, on the surface of the skin, I look at my skin, I only see pores of the skin. Yes, but the skin itself is a receptor. The eyes are not on the inside of the skin, they are on the outside. Is another receptor. The ears are on the outside. You don't find ears on the inside of your throat. They're on the outside. So the outside, that's a receptor. The mouth is a receptor. The nose is a receptor. They all receive information of various types, and the information is coming from a combination of subtle areas within the universe, and it's being combined and it's being presented. It's presented to a certain viewer. And that viewer, without which nothing could happen, then creates an appropriate response. And the response is very complex. If you were to register all the activities from the brain, for example, all the way through to the neurological system that moves a hand, it's not just one or two or three actions involved. There are so many, many actions involved. But at the end of it, what was the conscious entity that decided to mobilize everything, behind everything? So let's take this, the body. The body is not just one thing. It can be viewed as a unit. But when you look at it close up, this unit is made from various parts, just like a car. And then a car moves. No point in having your car in the garage and leaving it there. You have a car, yes, yes. Oh, let's go to the shops. No, no, no. I have to keep it in the garage. So, yes, it's designed to move. And the various things that contribute towards its movement have to be taken into consideration. And so what mobilizes these parts? In a car, you have heaps of things, bolts, nuts, bars, plates, other parts found in the factory, even before a car is assembled. These things have to be there. And then more than likely these days, a robot comes and assembles them. So all these elements are made use of in the fabrication of any car that exists. But the proprietor or the owner or the driver is the agent. Second thing, body, agent. And then the wheels, the steering wheel, brake, clutch, gearbox are various senses compared to that. And the fuel, the petrol that you put in is energy. There's no energy of yours. When you put petrol into the car or diesel into the car cannot claim this petrol is mine. And when the petrol is exhausted, some other thing has to be put in, some more fuel has to be put in. You can't make a personal declaration of ownership about it. It goes in, it gets exhausted. So it does not belong to you. It is all God's energy, divine energy. Even if you don't like the word God, it's okay. Divine energy is enough. Some energy, some universal energy is there, beyond our scope, and driving everything. The same energy in you, the one that drives all the powerful galaxies. Starting off with rotation, probably caused by a black hole, its gravitational energy managing to create an attraction, a rotation, and some angular momentum goes on, and so the whole galaxy starts turning like a huge wheel. And it's not the only one doing it. All the galaxies are doing it, and all the suns within the galaxy are doing it, and all the planets around the stars are doing it. A certain angular momentum is set, like a giant clock being set into motion. So the human being has parts. Parallel to all this thing called a car, the body is the center from where attachment and aversion, joy and misery come, because our great inherited entity, our great source of everything, our great consciousness that is behind it, flows, that is our birthright, and it flows normally through these channels of the senses, reacting and then engaging and bringing in information that is reliable enough to act on. Sometimes the judgment is poor and the reaction is also poor. So there's an agent in all of this, and joy and misery arises when this consciousness that is normally our birthright flows through the sense organs to the objects which give us some difficulty and some lack of peace, some mental disturbance. We can't blame anything else for it. We can only say that we should maybe take that consciousness, or ask the question at least, what happens if we take that flow of consciousness and allow it to stay for a moment internally, where it resides, where it's there in a state of poise. Immediately our problems get solved. We can do an exercise even like that. I think I may have done it before in these classes, but somebody came to me, unnamed, with some kind of agitation, some kind of nervous difficulty, some pressure from work. Please sit down, I said. I've mentioned this before in some of the classes. Sit down now. And before you sit down, walk toward your chair and sit. He walks. All right. What happened? I walked from here and I sat down there. All right. Now sit down now. Close your eyes nicely. Relax a little bit. A few deep breaths. Now imagine yourself again walking. But this time, register it anonymously. Register it impersonally. Even say the name, whatever it is. Bob. Bob is walking from this location. I see him walking. He's sitting in the chair. He's now relaxing. How do you feel after that experience? Why you feel so calm? Why? Because you detached from a sense of embodiment. You didn't, for that time, register yourself as any one of the parts, or even the collective parts called the body. And so this prana, or life energy, equivalent to the fuel put in, functions in various ways. And the Jivatman is the presiding deity manipulating all these instruments within. The Jivatman, that is the activating entity, by its very presence it's there, together with all the other senses of ownership or individuality that collectively tell a story of an individual that collected all kinds of experiences and looks like an individual. And so the next one goes like this. Sharira van manobhya yat karma prabhapati naha nyayam va viparitam va pancheti tasya hetavaha. Whatever action a person performs with his body, with the speech or with the mind, whether right or wrong is our own classification. A plant doesn't decide what is right or wrong. An animal, a dog, doesn't decide whether it's right or wrong. Maybe some kind of training would be there from a domestic animal, but still there's no moral judgment in it. There's just a reaction in it, just a training in it, a reward and punishment. Pavlov's salivation principle. So, right or wrong, these 5 things are its causes. Let's go back and find out what these five things are. Body is one. Agent that drives it is another. Body is like a car. Agent is driver. The various senses are the various parts that make contact and provide the information, the different functions of various sorts, and the presiding deity, that is the one without a second that sits there, in a sense by its presence coordinating everything, acts as the 5th. Let's learn to rephrase this. Let's learn to revalue the human body in this way. Now, so whatever action a man performs, somebody performs with his body, speech, or mind, whether right or wrong. These 5 are its causes. So the motor car that is assembled of innumerable parts may be made use of for various purposes, of course. It can be used to run somebody down or to get you to a certain place for some useful function. It can be used for hunting animals, or it can be used for transporting tourists. It's up to you. In Africa, we have these trucks that go around in the bush. And previously, in colonial times there in Africa, India, and so on, animals were hunted with vehicles like that. But nowadays, people go around safari parks and look at all the animals and point them out. I was in one safari park in Zimbabwe, and the vehicle had gotten to rhinoceroses in front, 2 rhinos there. Rhinos are notoriously bad-sighted. They haven't much sight. So they go according to, they have an acute sense of smell. But when they charge, they'd be dangerous. So what to do? We're there, and these 2 rhinos in front. And there was a national parks scout there. He got out of the vehicle, walked out to them and said, "Shoo, shoo." And they all went away. As he got out of the vehicle, our hearts were here. What is he going to do? No, shoo, shoo. He's already done this before. And they know him, obviously. Oh, this man's coming and saying, "Shoo, I suppose we have to go." The thing is, what we see as dangerous and a big obstacle in life, we have the capacity to overcome it. See the psychosocial evolution in man that is able to say to such dangerous animals, "Shoo, shoo," and it's gone. See what an amazing thing, what an amazing part that ego is. And so it is a field of action, but one question that arises from this is a question: how is the Atman connected with all these activities? Because the Atman never moves. The Atman has no mind in it. The mind belongs to it. No parts in it. Parts belong to it. And so that's an important question that can arise. And the next stanza will give us the answer. Tatrayavam sati kartaram atmanam kevalam tuya. Pashyati akrata bhuti tvan nasa pashyati durmatiha. That being so, the man of perverse mind, who on account of his imperfect understanding looks upon the self, the absolute, that is, that which remains after all the perishable parts go away, looks upon the self, the absolute, as the agent he does not see at all. If you think that that entity within you is the one that's doing all the work, you have made a mistake. All the work belongs to these activated parts. Swamiji, you traveled all the way to Belfast and back again in a day. Don't you feel tired? No, I just sat. The car did the rest. Why should I be tired? Go and ask the car if it's tired. See? Oh, I spent the whole afternoon baking. Oh, I see. What did the electricity do? You just mixed a few ingredients, put it in. Electricity did the rest. Why should we claim ownership of something we never owned? A fireman. Oh, I put the fire out. Oh, every flame you went, no, I don't think so. You just held the water like this. Simple job. Directed here, directed there. Water did the rest. See? Oh, I watered the flowers. You put water on, no doubt. But what happened after that? The water got saturated in the soil. All the plants drank it up, took the hydrogen element of the water, and maybe even the oxygen element. Oxygen gave off through the leaves, and the hydrogen combined with carbon to make carbohydrates. Did that. So it plays no part in the fivefold activity of this car. And it shall not be called either the agent nor the presiding deity of the automobile. It's neither of these things. It's just pure consciousness, and it sits there. So Atman is in action. That's the message. And the 17th stanza will tell us this. Now, before I go into the 17th chapter, I'm not going to deviate from our study. So I'm going to go back to the 4th chapter and see if there's any evidence of what we're saying there, or any clue about what we're saying there. So this is importance of Shastra, scripture, understanding its meaning and absorbing. Now, how do we study scripture? Before I go into this, I want to deal with that. What do we mean by scripture? You can pick up some scriptures in some religions, and it gives you a whole lot of genealogy. So-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so, a history, a family history going on. Well, what's the purport of it? What's the meaning of it? And then within it, there may be mythology. Let's take, for example, the Abrahamic texts, which tell us about Genesis. Tells us about a story about a being, male, of course, and then from its rib, a female. It seems very biased to me, but never mind. They didn't have gender equality in those days. Anyhow, so we have this idea. Now everything is fine. To cut a long story short, everything is fine in paradise. And all religions seem to have this threefold step-by-step process. Things are perfect in the beginning, and then something happens in between, and there's an effort to go back to the original condition. So what happens? A serpent comes along. Now in most cultures, and mythologist Joseph Campbell will tell us this, in most mythologies, a serpent represents life. Nature and life. Why? Because we notice that a serpent, a snake, has the habit of shedding its skin, and underneath a brand new skin. Renewed life. A very positive thing. Now you could take it in a different way, that life is evil and we have to combat it. That would be a very unfortunate approach to life. That nature is against us. But unfortunately, that's become the legacy of that story. But let's see what it means. So there it is. A tree is presented. Look at this universal culture. How samsara is presented as a tree. The Ashwatha tree is mentioned, 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And it's a vriksha, the thing that can be cut down. This is a tree whose roots are above and whose branches are below. So we have a tree that is presented here, representing life as such. And life, when we look at it, has duality. Duality means pairs of opposites, good, bad, plus, minus, electron, positron. Whichever way you look at it, we find this balancing duality. Should evil be there? Of course, it should be there. A shock? Yeah, it should be there. If there wasn't evil, how would we know what is good? If there wasn't shade, how would you know what is light? It's only our evaluation. What I mean is to get beyond what is these evaluations of duality and to get beyond time. So it's described as a tree of knowledge. You'd think that knowledge was a good thing, but knowledge really means ignorance. It means knowledge of the objective world and the mistake. I am the body, I am the car, I am the mind, I have a bank account, I have this, I have that, etc., etc., etc. And the environment, I have to make sure that is in my favor, never mind about everybody else. This is the mistake we made. And so this is called avidya. Vidya means knowledge. Avidya means ignorance. And the tree of knowledge is the tree of knowledge in two senses. The tree of knowledge of good and bad, a discernment, which only man has. But when I evaluate it in this way, I find it's a tree of ignorance. Because this evaluation itself is wrong. It's useful for me to use it to lead a useful life, no doubt. But in a total context, then I have to see it objectively. If I see it objectively, I see the whole thing as part of nature that has to be dealt with. So the apple is there, the forbidden fruit. That is, when I eat that fruit, as soon as I eat that fruit, I've tasted nature, and it gives me the opportunity to be attached. And then I consider all the fruit is mine. The fruit of all my actions is mine. I take ownership of it. What a wonderful story. So that's contained also, you see, in that kind of scripture. But how do we sort out, coming back to our original subject, how can we sort out the sand and the sugar? We have to use our discernment and discrimination about it. So Sri Ramakrishna makes this wonderful statement. Maya is inherent in Ishvara. Maya, the apparitional point of view, the appearance that this world is entirely real, that this world should be dealt with as if it was a permanent thing, as if it wasn't changing, and it is changing, as if it was permanent and it's impermanent, as if it were valuable and we see it's ephemeral, nothing will last, there are no permanent habitats in this world, not even this earth. Our sun, some 5 billion years old, has shone for 5 billion years, but after 10 billion years, it goes the way of all stars. It'll run out of its hydrogen fuel and start imploding on itself. Then what will become of the Earth? Well, by that time, the pull of gravity will be so weak that we'll have been shifted out. We'll be shifted out maybe toward the distance of Mars, and then life on Earth, its support system gone, will also diminish. Now you may think, oh, that's okay, I'm not going to live 5 billion years. But then don't live your life as if you're going to live 5 billion years. Don't be misguided, because death will happen to everybody. And every car will get rusty, and every car will get old. And we shouldn't register it as an unpleasant fact, because the body can come and go, but what sits behind it will always remain. And so Maya is inherent in Ishvara. Ishvara means God. Now a question was brought up, was it last week? You confuse me. On the one hand, you say God. On the other hand, you say Supreme Principle, and so on. What is the God? God is that Supreme Principle as interpreted and seen and read by the human mind through our sense of ignorance. And from our point of view, it acts. But why should we have that view? And why should it act? Is because of this term Maya. Maya is not only a hiding factor, but it's also a revealing factor. And it's also a projecting factor. The projecting aspect is what is called Maya in Ishvara. And this Maya is constituted of both ignorance and knowledge, Vidya and Avidya, both the tree of good and the tree of evil, both merit and demerit. Knowledge and ignorance is contained within it. The Vidya Maya is made up of discrimination, devotion, detachment, love of all beings. Please register that. First of all, discrimination, discernment, sorting out what is valuable and what is not valuable, deciding to put your energy into what is valuable and what is enduring, and deciding not to make a bad investment. Devotion, having made an effort to discern, you then take all your energies and steer it in a particular direction. The most common direction which is there is love of God. Detachment, these are not my activities, nor will I accept the fruit of my actions. And love of all beings arises spontaneously. If I think that this world is only one without a second, if I think that there is only a wholeness, if I think in a totality way, then any harm I do to any aspect would be exactly equivalent to doing it to myself. It's only my sense of individuality that prevents me from understanding this. If you truly understood it, just in principle, not even as an operating principle, just as an abstract principle, then just from pure sheer reasoning, you would not do any harm to any living being. You see? So you take your hand, you wouldn't give yourself a slap on your right cheek. I hazard a guess you wouldn't do it. So why you do it to another is because you didn't understand the other's cheek is your own cheek. Do unto others as they would do unto you. Yes, that's a golden rule for everybody, whether it's scientific humanist even, that's a rule. In fact, that's the basis for social humanism. But why should it be there? Is it just a social construct? Or at a deeper level, is it because there's only one total thing? No matter which way you look at it, there's only one thing. Science will tell us that everything gets resolved back into energy, potential energy, gravitational energy, electrical energy, nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is not so significant in the drama of things, but gravitational energy and electrical energy, they are there. So all of that is one. You can classify it one thing, potential energy. All chemistry can be resolved back to one thing, hydrogen. And the drama is to do with hydrogen as an electrical energy and gravity pushing it in and making it fall. These two things. Very simple. What is the human entity? It goes back to one single thing. We call this Atman. The Atman sitting there, all these other things disappear. Brahman sitting there, the world disappears when you sit there. Just as in a dream or dream asleep, in a dream, this waking world disappears. Some other drama comes on. And when you fall into a deep sleep, the whole thing disappears. Not even a registration I is there. Nothing is there. It takes the aspirant Godward, avijja maya, on the other hand, estranges man from the divine, from God. And we can say God. Why not? As long as we understand that this God is the highest, the supreme principle as seen by us to the human mind. So here's an important statement now that comes from this. Because the question arises, are the ignorant ones allowed to go astray? Is it their fault really that they're ignorant? They didn't ask to be born ignorant. There it is, they're ignorant. So the plan is now expounded in the next stanza, which is 11. Now here's a very important stanza. It gives us an insight into the harmony of religions. And so the verse changes because it says that the diverse means are to the same end. You know, we are an active member of the Dublin City Interfaith Forum. And there we try and teach our colleagues. Teach our colleagues. You may think that's arrogant. Who are we to teach our colleagues in other religions? 7 religions are represented, religious faiths. Why is the Hindu in a position to teach others? Because he represents the oldest school of thought. He represents the fundamental unity which he sees. Ekam Sat Vipra Bhagavadanti, truth is one. Wise people call us variously is a fundamental statement in the Rig Veda. So yeyata mam prapadyanti samstataiva pajamyaham mama vartmanuvartante manusha partha sarvasaha. In whatever way, people identify with me, that is the Supreme, in the same way do I carry out their desires. I don't discriminate. I don't say I'll only do it for the Lutherans. Men pursue my path my central path, in all their different ways. We shouldn't argue whether your way is better than mine or my way is better than yours just because it's different. And so religions are similarly divergent to suit varying temperaments. Worship with the aid of an image, for example, is a help to one and an obstacle to another. You shouldn't say, the one who finds it an obstacle shouldn't say, no, you should never have an image. And the one with an image should say, you should never not have one. What suits you? So we were talking some weeks ago, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And I was describing the shrine in there. And there you see we cater for everybody. And even if Muslims come in and they don't, or Jews, and they don't like these images, then we have sufficient curtain material to close it off. Just close it off. Finished. You don't have to look at that. We make an apology. Wait there, please, by the door. I'll close off the thing that you don't want to see. We'll close it off. Bring them in. Come in now, please. And so, an act held as the adoration of a supreme entity, the Almighty, by one path, is abhorred as blasphemy by another. That's true. But the same Lord recognizes the need of all these divergent paths. If you have 3 different children and one likes Brussels sprouts and another one doesn't, then you have to provide for both. All right. Now a question arises, and this is the last question we have tonight. Why are people running after little things instead of seeking the Lord himself? With all these principles, with all this philosophy, with all this teaching, with all this scriptural wisdom, can you tell me, why is it that people are running after the little things instead of doing this? Why are people playing Trivial Pursuit as their entertainment? And the fact then is explained in this next stanza. Only one stanza is related to it. And it says, Kangshantaha karmanam sitim yajanta iha devataha shipram hi manushe loke site bhavati karmaja. Longing for success in action on earth, they worship the illuminating factors, that is the minor deities. For quickly is success born of action in this world. If you want success, then pray to God for success. What you're really doing is shuffling around the subtle elements of life, which here are described as devas. Deva is mistranslated as God, gods, and gives rise to the misunderstanding of polytheism. No, first of all, Deva, in terms of pratima, that is a symbol or an image or a concept. These are simply different avenues and provides us for a sense of pluralism, so many ways toward the same thing. But then in this world, we have the forces of nature. The forces of nature we can classify also 5-fold. In terms of an energetic way of describing it, we have potential energy, we have kinetic energy, we have radiation, we have electricity, we have magnetism. Now, in addition, of course, we have nuclear forces. The ancient people understood and discovered those ones. They didn't quite get the nuclear forces. But then nuclear forces may well be a minor variation of the others. Whatever the case may be, the key forces are described. So gravitational energy is described as a potential energy called Agasha. Then we find kinetic energy is called Vayu. And then we find radiational energy is called Agni. And then we find electromagnetism. We learn to combine these two, are the last ones. Pradhivi, magnetism. And these are all associated with the 5 senses. So, if you want success speedily, learn to manipulate those forces for you. And that's fine. But understand that the central entity is manifesting in this way. These are the divine glories of this one central entity. So how are we to know of the attainments of people? Then we find 4 grades of people are there. a most contentious issue, which is called Varna. And we go on to that. That is stanza 13 of the 4th chapter, where we closed off there. Om Shanti, 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 Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.